brought with me our Chief Financial Officer, David Patillo, who will assist me with any financial questions at the end, and our Chair, Barney Quinn, has joined us also. What ClearStar does is helps an individual represent what they are to a prospective employer, their education, their background, their certifications, that they make certain statements about themselves that an employer needs to know so that they can transparently be evaluated as to whether they fit a safe hiring practice for that employer. What ClearStar does is understands what the requirement of the employer is to make the hiring decision, and then works with the applicant to obtain the information and represent them truthfully. In some cases, we have to redact, control, or mitigate some of the information because the employer doesn't need to see it, nor do they want to for liability purposes. For example, where that individual used to live, specifically in what neighborhood, the employer could be accused of socioeconomic profiling. So we would not tell the employer where the employee or prospective employee lived, but we would give them a pass or fail based upon our ability to find a historical record of the employee. Same thing when we do drug screening. You may have certain drugs in your system that create a positive result. The employer doesn't need to know that you had a positive result. We would do the evaluation with a medical review board, a medical review officer, and we would see what the reasons were for those drugs to be in your system, and then we would just tell the employer, pass or fail. So the real role of ClearStar is to be that trusted third party between potential applicants or contract labor and a potential employer or any place of business where people need to be screened to create a safe environment. We do this by accessing data across several different data, also collecting data and information from the individuals, and then providing the decision to the employer. In some cases, we have to go back to the applicant and re-verify and give them the opportunity to dispute the information. In some cases, we have to use other data sources and data means to extrapolate information and provide to the employer. The misconception about what we do is it's a very Orwellian process, right? This is Big Brother looking into my history. It's absolutely the opposite. It's a representation by the applicant. In every situation, the applicant gets to dispute the information, correct it about themselves, and it's our responsibility to ensure that he's presenting the information correctly, and that information is actually about him. So we provide that services to multi-million-dollar companies, very large companies that have a high demand need for screening people. Last year we did about 7.8 million screens in the continental United States. That encompassed 2.3 million people, which is a substantial amount of the market. Our channel partners have done more. We service not only directly, but through channel partners. The main mission, am I not?
I'll take you forward.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
See, I always need somebody to assist. That's why David's with me.
I'll do everything.
You're doing great, Andy.
Sorry about that. And the big challenge that we've had in growing the business is brand recognition. So we floated on the market about 3 years ago. Up until that point, we were strictly a technology provider. We provided infrastructure, very much like a Salesforce.com would provide infrastructure, and other companies who do what we do today would use our technology to provide those services. In the US, these companies are called consumer reporting agencies. The same thing as the credit bureaus are. We fall under the same guidelines as the credit bureaus in the United States. These are some of the services that we offer that would be collected on an individual to make a proper representation or report, specifically their identity, where they had gone to school, and the challenges in getting this information to the employer is basically filling the gap. When a job applicant's brought in, the only piece that is outside of the employer's control is the verification of information on the individual. He can do the interviewing, he can do the testing, he can qualify the individual based on knowledge, but you need that third party to expedite that gap so that they can get the employee to work. In the new job economy, it's very much real-time manufacturing employment. right? So we've entered the gig economy. Uber's kind of pushed that along. I know that's been a big catchphrase lately, but that's taking on more and more of a precedent in the United States where employees are only brought in, or labor is only brought in as they're needed, where they're needed. And that means that we have to be very dynamic about how we do our screening, that we have to be very flexible in being able to get to the location of the applicant, but also designing our technology in a way, in a consultative fashion with the employers, so that we can streamline their process by ingraining ourselves in their technology or their processes or their places of employment. Next slide. And these are some of the companies that we're providing these services to. So Costco, we do the screening for all their pharmaceutical distribution centers and pharmacies. So anybody who touches drugs in Costco, not only do we do their continual drug screening, but we do their sanctionless monitoring. In the event that one of their pharmacists gets sanctioned by a state or loses its license, we monitor those databases and notify Costco of that infraction. It used to be in our market that screening was done up front, right? So as part of the risk mitigation process, they would screen an employee when they came in. Now it's continual screening. We're constantly monitoring the applicant after the fact, and in some cases helping to manage the applicant after the fact. And when I go into our case studies, I'll give you a little bit of vision of what that's about. Loomis is cash handling. We do the cash handling portion for Loomis, specifically in the drug screening side, where we help them get people to certain job requirements that have heavy duty cash, and those could be, Loomis does things like an event cash handling where they have a concert at a hall. It's the Loomis people that are actually taking the tickets, processing the credit cards, processing the cash. We'll talk a little bit about IntelliCentrics, which is one of my business models that I want to use, where we're providing drug screening type of services to hospitals. Six Flags Amusement Park, we do all the sexual offender monitoring of ride operators and anybody interacting with adolescents in the theme parks. Visiting Angels, these are the people that come around home to home and provide health care to the elderly or monitoring of the elderly. Unigroup Trucking is also going to be one of the models that I go through and describe. Just recently, we signed the Ladies Professional Golf Association. So we're doing all the background screening for the employees of the LPGA, and next year we will also be doing their volunteers. And when I go into our product offerings, I'll show you why they chose us to do that. PMA is the Pacific Maritime Association. This is a consortium of the 4 unions that make up ship workers, dock workers, anybody that deals with anything that's happening on the seaboard. We're going to be doing all of their government-required drug screening and background screening. Down at the bottom, you see Securitas, American Data Bank. They are channel partners of ours. Securitas, which in the United States is Pinkerton. I think they're the number 2 security guard agency. But they also are a background screening company. They use our infrastructure, a lot of our data, the tools we provide them as a white label channel partner. American Data Bank, our largest channel partner. They're owned by Komori Enterprises out of Japan. They purchase a lot of our drug screening services, but they also use our entire infrastructure. They use our technology, they use our databases. In some cases, they even use our personnel to re-verify their information for them. We are the backbone of Angie's List. So if you've heard about that in the US, Angie's List is a referral service for tradesmen that go into the home. We screen the tradesmen for Angie's List, give them a certification and qualification requirement, so that when somebody says, I need a plumber, they know at what level that plumbing service has been screened. They can index and find out the employee that is coming to their location is screened. And then we do continual monitoring for Angie's List. So as expiration dates at the 1-year point or new employees are added, we'll go to that vendor and make sure that their screening is up to par. We do that through a channel partner, but we're the entire back office there. So next slide. So here's an example of what differentiates us. Now, to restate, we do background screening to verify people
are who they say they are and are what they say they are. The challenge with that is, when does the person screen? In the traditional sense, they would go into a hiring office, apply for a job, fill out the application, and be screened. But the challenge in the new economy is that you need the labor where the work is, when the work is. And then how do you screen them at that point? How do you start to process people in an ad hoc fashion so that you have continuity in your business to be able to get labor when you need it? Unigroup is also United Van Lines, Mayflower Van Lines. Here in the UK, there's Sterling Moving, which is also Australia, and they've got several moving companies that are now under their umbrella in Germany. They're a $1.2 billion consortium of moving companies. The challenge is they contract for major corporations. That is the majority of their business. So like Dell Computer, HP, Microsoft, and they move a lot of their employees. They do all these corporate moves. For them to be cost efficient, when a tractor trailer leaves one location, it is not unusual for them to be rerouted en route to pick up other household goods or materials that need to be moved so that they can get an efficient route. Well, they don't bring the labor with them. It's just the driver. So how does the driver go and find qualified labor that's been screened that can meet the varied requirements of all these large corporations? The rule of thumb is, if I'm going to send somebody into your home, I have to provide the same level of security as the company who employs you. Because the company is dictating this moving company to come in and they're introducing a potential risk. So Unigroup said, look, if I'm going to go deliver to somebody who's at a Dell Computer employee, I need screening at this level. HP only requires this level. Microsoft requires this level. How do I find these employees? So what we did for Unigroup was we evolved a technology for them, developed and evolved a technology for them using biometric facial recognition. Now a driver can show up a location, and if he has 5 people that aren't screened, he can use his cell phone, take their picture, take a picture of their driver's license. The biometric will compare the picture of the face and the picture of the driver's license, and it will also go out and validate the driver's license or passport or 200 other forms of government issued IDs, so I know that that individual is who they say they are. Then the system within 5 minutes will do the background screen required. If we need more information, the applicant's right there and can do it on the phone. They can sign their consent, electronic signature. We can even dispatch them for a drug screen if needed, but that's rare because we're doing ad hoc labor. After the fact, we're giving the driver an electronic black book, which we call Clear Contact. What Clear Contact will allow the driver to do is maintain a list of all these screened people along their route, and if he has to return, he can automatically schedule his route and send text and wait for response. So say he needs 8 people and only 3 are available, he just says, bring a friend, I'll give you $50 for each referral. They show up, he does the facial recognition and ID, we now have a record of a screened individual, he's now added to the labor pool. We won that bid for Unigroup specifically because of our development of that technology. The way we developed the technology was in a shell environment on mobile phones, which means we can use any supplier. We use the same suppliers that supply customs, immigration, so we're getting the same information and providing it back to the driver on the casual labor that they would have to employ at that point. We've been onboarding Unigroup over the last 2 years. They signed the contract in 2015. We finished the application, which really only took 6 weeks for us to develop. We finished the application in 6 weeks, and since they're such a massive organization, they have 82 distributive agents. We've been onboarding them over a period of time. I think we're at about the 80% point in onboarding. Their largest agents in Jacksonville, Florida, that we were onboarding this month, and due to the hurricane, they asked to push that off for a month. So we'll be working with them next month. Unigroup was a watermark client for us. One of the challenges, as I stated before, that we have is brand recognition. We had great technology, we had great insight into the industry. Our channel partners were billing out $70 million a year in background screening, so we knew our infrastructure could support it, but we didn't have a recognized brand. So we were going to other large companies and trying to get into their process, and we weren't being recognized. Unigroup validated us, and more importantly, as I stated before, they move the furniture for the employees of HP, Dell Computer, Microsoft. So when we go to the employee's house and they say, well, here's these guys moving in your house and look, they've all been screened. Well, where'd you get that? Well, it's this company, ClearStar. So we started to get referrals. And it was Unigroup who introduced us to Pacific Maritime, a lot of the rail systems that we're starting to talk to, other trucking companies, helping us integrate with applicant tracking systems that actually does vendor management or employee management for the trucking companies. So it took us a while to get that brand recognition. Go to the next slide. Intellicentrics is a company that monitors vendors for hospitals. They do over 10,000 hospitals in the United States, Canada, and I think here in the UK, which means, according to the CDC in the United States, every vendor going into a hospital, and this is somebody who works in the cafeteria, is in the cleaning crew, is a nurse who has to work in the operating room, who is not a direct employee, has to meet the same screening requirements for communicable diseases that any employee of the hospital has to. And there's a high turnover in these employees, and each hospital group varies a little bit. The challenge Intellicentrics was having in their vendor management, because they would actually do the badging and background screening, they were the largest company of their kind, was the only way they could get the drug screening done was to hand them a piece of paper and say, well, when you go get this back from the lab, come back and we'll give you your badge. So vendors who were coming in saying, well, electrical company gets called and they win a bid to do the hospital, and the hospital says, well, the 20 guys you send all have to go through this. They'd all get a piece of paper, they'd all have to go find a laboratory, they'd have to get the test, get the results back. So there was sometimes a 2-3 week delay before these vendors could get to work. Well, we took our electronic chain of custody form that we had developed for drug screening in the employment industry and modified it for Intellicentrics to do this kind of communicable disease testing. As a matter of fact, what we were able to do is not only electronically solve the problem for them by being able to expedite the employees, we were able to convince the hospital groups to change some of their testing so it could all be blood oriented, so that we can now process a vendor for them in less than 24 hours. Two things we did to be able to accomplish this. First, what's unique in ClearStar in our medical information systems is we have deep integration to the major laboratories. We are the only company that has a product of this type. Each laboratory has a very similar product, but they only support that one laboratory. We support all 3 major laboratories. And not only can we send them information and retrieve it, and I say deep integration, I can actually follow the process in their system. I know the sample has been put in a dish. I know that the sample has gone into the centrifuge. I know that the sample is waiting results. I know that the sample is being reviewed. And if need be, I can go back to the vendor and say, you're at this point. Or I can go back to the hospital and say, the vendors you're trying to clear are at this point. Secondly, we have, because of the way we've designed our technology in a very open architecture widget type of format, we could embed our technology into Intellicentrics technology. So even all this work is being done by ClearStar, the vendors just see Intellicentrics, right? They're using their mobile application. We started onboarding them and realizing revenue 2 months ago, a little over 2 months ago. We're doing it right now through the desktop because the application that we've embedded in is also listed in the Apple App Store and in the Google App Store. So we're waiting for Intellicentrics to update their certification. That's all on Intellicentrics. Then we're going to be the preferred certification authority for those hospitals for any type of blood test that needs to be done on a vendor. This is a massive undertaking with a great deal of employees. So each hospital has huge turnover. Intellicentrics estimates that we're going to be dealing in the hundreds of thousands next year of vendor employees to these 10,000 hospitals. Next slide. We've had the highest revenue that we've ever had in the last 6 months. We've seen growth in every sector. Here it says really we're focusing on the transportation industry and home health care with the Visiting Angels. But the way to look at that is we are finding traction in any business where employees have high turnover and are geographically dispersed because of our mobile applications and mobile technology. I'll cover it at the end, but we've just introduced a new version of our mobile technology that is built a lot more aggressively for the mobile device, that is empowering some of these geographically dispersed employers even more. And that's bringing on some of the interest of our new product, really driving MIS. It's been our fastest growing division. It's introducing us to clients that we can do background screening for, but we're certainly differentiated between other companies in that, with that product. Next slide. So revenues increased 12%, H1. Direct services, we got 20% year-to-year growth. We are finding ways to start to realize revenue quicker through quicker adoption and faster ways to onboard customers. I mean, we're talking very large customers over large geographic areas. It is less of a challenge to sign the contract than it is to get full compliance and realize the entire revenue stream. We've reduced our general administrative expenses. Our adjusted EBITDA is up. As of June, we've got about 1.6 million in cash on hand. We are working on bringing on a debt facility because our AR, as we're dealing with these larger companies, is getting bigger and bigger. So we're looking at an AR facility. We go to the next one. This underscores what I said about MIS. We are the only ones with a product like this in a mobile environment that can handle all those labs and over 5,000 repository locations across the United States. We've moved from just drug screening now to blood testing, and we are about to roll out occupational health, where we have a requirement to do, physical monitoring. The important part about a third party doing this is we're not touching any of this, right? So it's not like we've got any heavy lifting to do. This is all happening electronically through the system with nobody really touching it. We deal strictly with the exceptions. If you're a head count person and you want to know revenue per head count, MIS is doing about $6.2 million run rate in a year. It's supported by 11 employees. That's customer service, that's specialty and understanding drug analysis, that's a full-time doctor who's our chief medical officer. So it's about $500,000 per employee, a little bit more than $500,000 per employee. So even though our gross margin may be a little bit smaller there, right down around 40% or so, our OpEx is immaterial. Thank you. And this is an example on the left of the passport that is the electronic chain of custody. Same thing when you get a ticket at the airport and you can put it in your wallet on your phone. Now the driver, or whoever the applicant is, can go into the drug screening place. What's very cool about the way this has been designed is not only will it tell the applicant where the closest drug screening place is and allow them to pick it and have a bar-coded chain of custody form, but it does have the capability to let the location know the guy's coming. It can let him know he's within 10 miles, 5 miles, just like your ticket, believe it or not, does in the airport. Do you ever notice that you've downloaded your ticket, it's sitting in your wallet, and then as soon as you enter the airport property, all of a sudden you're getting notices on the flight? Because that reports back to Delta or British Air that you're in the airport. When the driver or applicant has been drug screened, that goes red and the ticket's expired. And then we have a record, and that's the important part. We're also that third party keeping record of the transaction, but suppressing the data collected. In the event that it's needed in the future, we can produce it. The second little application you see here is our Clear ID product and our Clear Contact product, where we're capturing facial recognition. We're moving everything into the mobile environment so that we can start putting it in the hands of the applicant. The key is to get to that geographically dispersed applicant. So our technology is very scalable, right? We're in 2 data centers right now. We're one in Heathrow and one in Atlanta. We have backups in Pennsylvania, and I forget where our backup is here. But we spent a great deal of money last year, 2 years ago, in evolving our technology, specifically from an extendability standpoint, scalability standpoint, and security, where now we can dispense with the data centers, and we're very confident that we can spin out more of our application in the cloud, which will significantly reduce our technology spend because we have to buy computers, cabinets, and then pay for space and bandwidth. We've been working with Amazon for the last year, and everything's been working really well. We've actually got our entire front end out in their hybrid environment. Our software is very customizable. We go into an applicant, I'm going to give you a little, it's a differentiation point for us and our competitors, but we go into a potential customer and we're very consultative. We say, where are your bottlenecks? What's slowing you down? Don't worry about what background screening you need. To meet the requirements that you have for a safe environment, what problems are you running into? And then we take our software and we customize it or add hooks or build a layer to it that facilitates the need of the potential customer. And that's winning us business. As a matter of fact, in a market that some would complain is commoditized, we are decommoditizing the market by giving value through the application. And then security. We are secure down to the code level. We are evaluated by 3 different companies. The one who is the most fastidious about it is SWIFT. And SWIFT is the certification authority for a lot of the banks. We actually have to send SWIFT every time we make a major code change, our decompiled code. So this is exactly what the programmer writes. And they go through it line by line. They certainly use their own software, but there are people who have audited too, to see if there's any discrepancies in our code that could potentially open up a vulnerability. Dell SecureWorks certainly does our infrastructure certification. We pay them to salt us, which means we're attacked somewhere around 200-300 times a day. Some of it's Dell doing it to see if they can find any vulnerabilities. So they're constantly pinging our computer, looking for changes, looking for known issues based upon the firewalls that we use to see if they can gain access to our environment. Security is going to become more and more of a driver in this marketplace and a differentiator. And it's where some of the larger companies have really fallen behind, if anybody's following what's going on with Equifax right now. Right? So not only were they able to access 40 million records, all identity protection records, but their second vulnerability was the hackers put in the password, the login admin, and then the password admin, and they got in. Admin. Right. So we checked that too. We have a full-time security officer. We actually brought him over from the government. He was working at the Pentagon. He does all of our certifications and maintains his certifications. He's the one who works with our programmers, both in-house and near shore, to ensure that every application passes the security requirement before it's rolled out. Next one. These are products. In summary, Screaming Now is an applicant portal. It allows the applicant to interact with our technology, which we want, do an electronic signature, answer questions, take the application with them wherever they are, right? So it could be a concert, and we need to screen people for that. Clear ID paired with Clear Contact does facial recognition and identification and then management. Clear MD is our rebrand of what we used to call our paperless chain of custody, WebCCF. Now we're doing 3 areas with that. Drug screening, which is on the rise in the United States with the legalization of marijuana and some of the increase. One of the few areas our president hasn't decreased regulation is OSHA, which is safety requirements, where we're also doing the blood testing and now getting into the occupational health. All of these are opening up high revenue markets for us. We've got high visibility into future earnings because a lot of the contracts that we've signed take a while to adopt. You know, they're changing their philosophy and their ways of doing things. Efficiency sometimes is a little painful. And we're really confident that the revenue that is projected for us in the upcoming year is certainly an obtainable goal.